The question most people ask is why the Pope keeps getting involved in American politics. A religious leader. Souls, salvation, the next world, not immigration policy, not war decisions, not presidential conflicts. That question makes sense, but it misses something. The Pope has always been involved in politics. Every Pope, for centuries. What is different this time is one fact that changes everything. Pope Leo XIV is American. Not a foreign observer, not a European commentator. Someone who grew up inside the same civic culture that produced Trump, that produced the policies being criticized, that produced the voters on both sides. When a European pope criticizes American policy, it reads as an outside perspective. When an American pope does it, it reads as a domestic voice. It lands differently, it costs differently. Which means the real question isn't whether the pope should speak. It's this: every time he speaks, something is being spent. Every time he goes silent, something else is being spent, which cost accumulates faster, and who ends up paying it. Picture a family that came to the United States from Central America. They have been here for years, they built something, and now the policy environment is making them feel like the ground is shifting under their feet. Deportation numbers are up, the rhetoric is harder, the fear is real, and it is daily. For that family, the Pope speaking is not a news event. It is the largest religious institution on earth saying out loud, "What is happening to you is wrong, you are not invisible, someone is watching." That is not a small thing. That is the kind of signal that holds communities together when everything else is pulling them apart. And this time the signal is stronger than usual, because the Pope saying it is not someone from Rome looking at America from the outside. He is someone who grew up here, who knows what it feels like to be inside this country when it turns on people who don't fully belong. That proximity makes the words hit closer. It makes them harder to dismiss. The Catholic community in the United States is not a monolith, but the Hispanic Catholic population alone is tens of millions of people. When the Pope speaks to their situation directly, it does not just offer comfort, it creates political weight. It gives a dispersed, pressured community a shared reference point, a moment where they can say, "The Church has not looked away." That is what continuing to speak protects, not an argument, not a position, but a presence. Here is what the ongoing criticism is quietly building up on the other side of the ledger. Every time the Pope publicly challenges a Trump policy, the framing inside Washington shifts a little further in one direction. Not dramatically, not in a single headline, but gradually across meetings and briefings and background conversations, the Vatican starts to get filed under a particular category. A hostile foreign institution, an organization with an agenda, a voice that needs to be managed rather than consulted. That shift has a practical cost that has nothing to do with the current argument. The next time a war needs mediating, not this war, the next one, the Vatican's ability to get both sides to the same table depends on whether both sides still see it as neutral ground. The next time a refugee crisis needs a back-channel conversation, the doors that open for a neutral party stay closed for a party that has been publicly fighting with one side. The next time a climate negotiation needs a moral voice that governments can't easily dismiss, that voice needs to not already be on record as the opposition. Criticism now is borrowing against those future moments. And then there is the part that doesn't make the news. Inside the Vatican, the College of Cardinals is not unified on this. Several senior cardinals have spent years building relationships with American conservative institutions, relationships built on shared positions around abortion, around traditional family values, around the role of religion in public life. These are not abstract theological alignments. They are operational relationships, funding relationships, influence relationships. Every time Leo XIV pushes harder against Trump, those cardinals push back not in public, not in statements, but in the internal conversations that shape what the Vatican actually does versus what it says. The Pope speaks, but what happens after the speech is determined by people who were not part of making it. The criticism is real, but so is the fracture it is opening inside the building it is coming from. Picture a negotiating table. Two sides that have stopped talking to each other. A war that needs to end, or a crisis that needs a back channel that neither government can officially open. The person who gets invited to that table is never the one who has been loudly fighting with one of the parties. It is always the one who has kept the door open to both sides. That seat at the table is what silence protects. The Vatican's most valuable diplomatic asset is not its moral declarations, it is its accessibility. The fact that when a government needs a quiet conversation with another government, the Vatican is a place both sides can walk into without it looking like a concession. That only works if the Vatican hasn't already picked a side in the argument those two governments are having. Leo XIV going silent on Trump doesn't mean the Vatican approves of the policies. It means the Vatican is preserving the one position that makes it useful in the situations that don't make the news, the back-channel conversations, the quiet mediations, the moments where two parties need a trusted third room to meet in. And there is a longer horizon to consider. Trump's term ends, administrations change. The Vatican operates on a timeline that no elected government matches centuries against four-year cycles. A pope who stays quiet through one administration walks into the next one with his diplomatic relationships intact, his neutrality unquestioned, and his ability to operate across the political spectrum undamaged. Silence now is not surrender, it is preservation. Here is what the silence is quietly building up on the other side of that ledger. The family from Central America that was mentioned earlier, the one where the ground is shifting under their feet, they are not reading Vatican diplomatic strategy. They are watching whether the church shows up or doesn't, and when the Pope goes quiet while deportations accelerate and civilian casualties mount, the read on the ground is not the Vatican is preserving its neutrality. The read is simpler and harder. The church looked away. That feeling does not stay contained. It moves. It moves through communities, through parishes, through the conversations that happen after Sunday Mass in neighborhoods where people are frightened. And when it moves long enough and far enough, it stops being a feeling and starts being a decision. People leave, not dramatically, not with announcements, they just stop coming back. The Hispanic Catholic community in the United States is already the demographic the American church depends on most for its future. If that community reads Leo XIV's silence as the American Pope protecting American government interests over the people the church is supposed to stand with, that is not a diplomatic cost. That is a membership cost, and membership is not abstract. Membership is Sunday collections. Membership is schools staying open. Membership is the $170 billion infrastructure that only works if people still believe the institution deserves their participation. And then there is the part that doesn't get reported. When the Pope goes quiet, the assumption inside the Trump administration is not that the Vatican is staying neutral. The assumption is that the Vatican has decided not to fight, and policies that might have been slowed by visible moral opposition move faster in the absence of it. The silence that was meant to preserve leverage ends up removing the only friction that was slowing the thing down. Silence was supposed to keep the door open, but the door was being used and now it isn't. So here is what both doors actually look like when you put them next to each other. Continuing to criticize means spending moral authority now. The communities that need to hear the church hasn't looked away, they hear it. The signal is sent, the presence is felt. But the diplomatic channels narrow, the internal fractures widen. The future mediations, the back-channel conversations, the moments where the Vatican's neutrality would have been its most valuable asset, those get harder to access. The moral authority is spent in the present. The diplomatic cost arrives later. Going silent means preserving the diplomatic asset now. The neutrality stays intact. The future table stays accessible. The relationships with the next administration stay clean. But the communities on the ground read the silence as abandonment. The membership starts to erode. The infrastructure that took centuries to build starts losing the people it depends on. The diplomatic asset is preserved in the present. The moral authority cost arrives later. Both doors spend something. The only difference is when the bill arrives. This is not really a question about Trump. Trump is the occasion, not the subject. The subject is this: the Vatican holds two assets that cannot both be fully spent at the same time. Moral authority and diplomatic neutrality. Use one and you protect the other. Protect one and you spend the other. The choice is not between right and wrong. It is between which asset you draw down first and whether you can rebuild the other one before you need it again. Every institution that holds both of these things faces the same problem eventually. The Vatican is just facing it in public in real time with the whole world watching. Two doors, both of them real, both of them costly. Behind the first door, the Pope keeps speaking. The communities that are frightened hear that the Church is still there. The signal stays alive, but the diplomatic channels quietly narrow, the internal fractures quietly widen, and the future moments where the Vatican's neutrality would have mattered most become harder to reach. Moral authority spent now, diplomatic cost paid later. Behind the second door, the Pope goes silent. The back channels stay open, the neutrality stays intact. The next administration inherits a Vatican that hasn't burned its relationships. But the communities on the ground read the silence as abandonment. The membership erodes. The infrastructure loses the people it runs on, and the policies the silence was supposed to slow down move faster in the absence of friction. Diplomatic asset preserved now, moral authority cost paid later. Both doors lead somewhere real, neither door leads somewhere clean. The question the Pope is sitting with and the question this video is leaving with you is not which door is right, it is which cost is survivable, which asset can be rebuilt once it's been spent, which loss the institution can recover from and which one it cannot. So here is where it lands. Does the Pope keep speaking and spend the diplomatic asset slowly, hoping the moral authority outlasts the damage? Or does the Pope go silent and spend the moral authority slowly, hoping the diplomatic neutrality outlasts the abandonment? One cost now, one cost later, the door is open, the choice has to be made.